It's Thursday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand, happy to be back for another day. Hope you guys are having a great day out there today. Fantastic show coming up for you today. Velle E. Neal III, Star Tribune columnist, will join me here in just a little bit. Daily Delivery debate time. Also, kind of breaking out of that format just a little bit at the beginning of the segment. Lavelle and I talking about his interview with Rocco Baldelli, former Twins manager, at the outset of our discussion. That leads into a couple of debate questions about the managerial search to replace Rocco Baldelli and also the Vikings and what's going on with them heading into Thursday night football against the Chargers tonight. Revisionist history at the quarterback position in play with Lavelle. End of the show, I'll go through some Vikings playoff scenarios and explain to you why tonight's game feels so important to me. They're all big in the NFL, but this one, they're 3-3. Feels like a swing game in every sense of the word. Just trying to get through this stretch where they haven't been fully healthy. Carson Wentz going for a fifth start in a row. We'll see where they are after tonight, but it feels like a big one. Wild lose, bad road trip. Get to that here in a minute as well. First, though, what did I miss? Wolves opened play last night against the Blazers. 9:00 start. Tested a lot of us. Endurance, everything, patience, probably for a lot of that. I watched most of it on the big TV. Then it's like getting to the fourth quarter. I'm like, all right, I got to start getting ready to go to bed. I'll give them a little bit more time. They were down, I think, like 7 at that point. It's like I'll give them a little bit more time. They were playing a frustrating game, though. It really was a frustrating game. Was not what you wanted to see from them in the opener. They end up pulling it out 118 to 114. Glad I watched the fourth quarter on my phone as I, pretended to be falling asleep, pretended like I was actually going to go to bed when it's a close NBA game in an opener. And what was particularly interesting to me is how it happened and kind of the scenario leading up to it. We find out day of game, essentially, that Dante DiVincenzo is going to be in the starting lineup. He is ostensibly their starting point guard. They've moved Mike Conley to the bench. And, Chris Finch gives a pretty good, solid explanation for it pregame, basically saying, hey, this gives us more flexibility with Conley's minutes. He's getting older. He's 38. You don't want to be like stretching him too far. And also you want some versatility, find the right matchups for him, be able to close quarters, close games with him if you want. And then DiVincenzo had a good camp according to Chris Finch, and really thrived when he was in the lineup last season. So on its face, it made a lot of sense. Then the game started, and DiVincenzo was a mess. He had 6 turnovers, just sloppy, out of control ball handling, especially in the first half. So there's your plan, and then there's the reality, right? Conley comes in. It's not really his kind of game, right? It's a very physical game. They need a little bit more size. It seems like Portland is just, they're not one of the better teams in the West. They're probably not going to be very good this season. And by the way, Thursday morning we see some shocking news that Terry Rozier and head coach Chauncey Billups are involved in a gambling probe. Arrests made, things like that. That has nothing to do with last night's game, but that was shocking to say the least. So, that's the post game subtext to that is what was going on with that. But you watch the game itself and you're like, man, Portland, it's their opener. They're at home. Like every team that starts 0-0 thinks they can be good. And Portland, I think, thinks they can be good, or at least thought they could be good last night. And they were taking it to the Wolves for a lot of that game. And it was probably frustrating for the Wolves. It was not their kind of game, not their kind of, they weren't matching the intensity. They weren't matching the physicality all the time. It was just a little bit much for them. It was not really a good Mike Conley Jr. kind of game. So what happens is Wolves down 7 going into the fourth quarter. You start the quarter with no DiVincenzo, no Conley. Rob Dillingham hasn't sniffed the floor at all game. And you're like, okay, maybe it's Dillingham time. Maybe you're going to give him some run. Instead, Bones Highland, who I did not think was going to be much of a factor in the rotation at all. He does have point guard experience, but he's kind of low on the depth chart. He comes in to start the fourth quarter, ends up playing close to 8 minutes as a +5. So their whole fourth quarter, no DiVincenzo, no Conley, because when Bones Highland comes out with a little over 4 minutes left, Terrence Shannon Jr., young Terrence Shannon Jr., comes back into the game. He had a really good game, 25 minutes, I think 10 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and he is the closer. He's the closer next to Ant, basically. You get a lot of point Ant in those scenarios because it was him, it was Shannon, it was McDaniels, it was Randall, and it was Gobert. So basically all the starters except for DiVincenzo swapped Shannon for DiVincenzo in the closing time lineup until Gobert fouled out in like 30 seconds left when they were trying to ice the game. So that was interesting to me. So your plan is, DiVincenzo starts. You want to manage Conley's minutes. Maybe Dillingham gets sprinkled in, but maybe it's not his kind of game. Maybe he's not ready yet. Maybe you didn't like what you saw from him in the preseason. Your point guard ends up being Bones Highland for 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, and then basically no point guard because it's Ant and Terrence Shannon basically handling the ball, trying to score in the closing moments. It works because of two things. One, after the game, Anthony Edwards gave a lot of credit to that opening lineup in the fourth quarter that also included Jalen Clark for kind of stepping up the defensive intensity, getting them kind of back into a rhythm, kind of changing the momentum of the game. Here was Ant after the game.
Hit the boards, just changed the pace of the game. I think Bones, TJ, and Jalen Clark, they definitely changed the game tonight.
What happened, I guess, collectively with the defense in the fourth quarter to really kind of get stop after stop, which we weren't able to do earlier?
Jalen Clark, man, he's incredible. On the ball, in the gaps, playing the passing lanes, just everything that he does. It elevates the team on the defensive end, and just try to follow that type of energy.
And then the other reason they got away with it is Anthony Edwards was simply incredible in this game. He was good from start to finish. He was great in the fourth quarter. He hit the 3 that put them ahead for the first time in forever. He hit another 3 with about a minute and a half left that put him ahead for good. He made the step back kind of mid-range shot with about 8 seconds left to ice the game. He was tremendous. 41 points. He only finished with 1 assist, but I felt like he was still making the right plays. I felt like he was still passing. They just didn't hit a lot of shots out of his passes. So I didn't feel like it was a game where he was necessarily trying to be the hero, but he did end up being the hero. He was the hero of this game for the Timberwolves. And so they get away with it because Chris Finch, I think, showed enough willingness to be versatile within his rotations to say, you know what? Plan A wasn't necessarily working. That's DiVincenzo. Plan B's not really working. That's Conley. Let's try Bones Highland. Not Rob Dillingham, but let's try Bones Highland. We're not worried about hurt feelings. We're worried about trying to win a game. You can't give games away. There's 82 of them, but you don't want to give a game away. You don't want to say, hey, learning, growing, things like that. Hey, you can do that in practice. You can do that when you're up 15, things like that. So he's like, maybe this is how we win this game, and it ends up working out. So some concern with how things went overall, but in the end, they win the game. They find out a few things about themselves. Jalen Clark, huge on defense. Shannon, great all night. Looks like both of those guys belong in the rotation. Concerned that Dillingham couldn't get any run, but again, it's a long season, so it helps to have one of the best players on the planet when you are trying to win, and the Wolves had that in their opener on Wednesday, and it showed. The Wild, on the other hand, had a really miserable, maybe is the way to put it, time against the Devils on Wednesday, losing 4-1. Last one of those was an empty net goal, but they fell behind 3-0 before Matt Boldy scored in the third period. Really not competitive in this game. It was a tough road trip, 1-3-1. They felt like maybe they'd found something against the Rangers the other night, getting that one win on the trip, but instead kind of falling back on familiar problems against the Devils. They haven't been able to score 5-on-5 pretty much all season. I think they have like 9 5-on-5 goals this season. They were being propped up earlier this season by the power play, which started 10 of 21, almost a 50% power play through the first handful of games, and that's what was getting them the goals they needed to win, to stay kind of afloat in the standings, things like that. They're 0 for their last 11 on the power play now. So when you're not scoring at even strength and you're not scoring on the power play, you're just not scoring. And so that is the problem with the Wild right now, in addition to, hey, maybe they're not as, tight checking as they want to be, things like that. But, when you've got Boldy and Kaprizov playing together a lot, Eriksson Ek really doesn't have his offense going yet. He's not really scoring 5-on-5. Marcus Foligno largely getting shut out this year. Tarasenko has been kind of a no-show so far. Like, these guys have track records. This could just be start of the year kind of funk stuff, but it's concerning at this point. It's concerning the lack of offense. You thought maybe they had 3 lines that can score. Really, right now, they've got no lines that are scoring. Most of it's been on the power play this season, and now the power play has dried up. Coach John Hines lamenting, some overpassing, not enough shots on goal. Just get the puck to the net. Good things will happen. They're trying to be too cute, too fine. That does happen sometimes when you're pressing, trying to score goals. Adds up to a team that just really hasn't found its way yet this season and needs to find it in a hurry. Kind of felt like all the off-season drama had kind of cleared up. You had, extensions for Kaprizov, extension for Gustafsson, Rossi. Like, you had your core coming back. You kind of understood what you needed going forward. It just hasn't clicked yet for the Wild. They needed to start clicking pretty soon, even though the season is still very young. I'd like to welcome in Velle E. Neal III right now to Daily Delivery. We got our debates segment today, Lavelle. A little different than usual. Usually we have 3 debate subjects. Today, just 2. But at the outset, I want to ask you about some reporting you did this week for a column on Rocco Baldelli, the fired Twins manager. You talked to Rocco for, sounds like, quite a while. What did we learn from the conversation with Mr. Baldelli?
Well, I've always thought it was rather unique that, when managers are fired from other organizations, they rarely return or stick around. I think Rocco's going to follow in the footsteps of TK, Guardy, and Paul Mauder, in which they still kind of hang around and be present after their managerial run is ended here. Rocco says, he made a big point, when we were swapping texts before that. He says, I'm going to be rooting for the Twins, from here on in. There's a lot of people in the organization I really care about. So he is definitely not bitter. He doesn't have an axe to grind. There's no sour grapes with Rock. Is he disappointed that some things didn't work out? Absolutely. Everybody's got regrets when things like this happens. But, he also wants to remember the good things. They went to a few playoff series. They ended a postseason losing streak drought. Some players did get good under his watch. Not everything was perfect. So, since the Twins picked up his option last year, he really doesn't have to work this year because he's getting a paycheck. So,
yeah,
I think he's going to ease his way back in. There were teams that definitely were interested in seeing if he wanted to talk to them about their situations, but he made it clear that he wants to spend time with his family. And he's got 2 young twins and a daughter. They're all at home in Rhode Island right now, and that's where he's going to spend the off season. And he'll ease his way in. And I think he'll let some people know when he's ready to have some sort of role with the organization again. But he sounded upbeat. The spirits were good. He got a lot of responses after he was let go. So he knows who his friends are in baseball. So he's content right now.
I think he wrote he said he went into like a bedroom in their house and just tried to respond to as many people as he possibly could. It's probably a lot when that sort of thing happens.
It's funny. There's this guy I know I see occasionally, and he sells fencing, and so he sold a fence to, I want to say, Chris Finch.
Okay.
So then he sells a fence to Rocco, and now he's trying to sell to all the managers and coaches in town. No, it was a KLC. It was KLC.
Oh, okay.
Sold a fence too. So I texted Rocco. I said, Rocco, this was during the season. Rocco, this guy named Dan. He said that he sold you fencing, and Rocco said, "Oh yeah, I remember Dan. He was a great guy. Tell him that the fence works great." Well, then last week I run into Dan, the defense man, again, and he shows me his phone where he texted Rocco, "I'm sorry to see that you're leaving the Twins. Good luck in the future." And Rocco responded to him.
That's amazing. That's great.
Top of the well wishes.
Oh man, that's fantastic. Try to imagine KOC putting a fence in. It might kind of go back and forth. Which fence do I want? Is this fence really ready to go into the ground?
This is my best required to put this fence in.
It's a joke for another time. He's a fence whisperer. But yeah, with Rocco, I mean, it's, I feel like the thing that has got to, from a negative standpoint, and he's not trying to dwell on the negative, but from a negative standpoint, I'm sure the thing that still eats at him is how 2024 ended, right? Because it's like, you go to the playoffs in 2023, you win a playoff series, you're competitive against Houston. Everybody gets mad that offseason about, the fans do, about who's gone, who left, but that team was still 70-53 until, looking like 95% chance at the postseason. I feel like he's said it a couple times, like that's really the pivot point. That's where things start to all turn, and if not for that, he's probably still here right now.
Well, they were in the playoffs up until what, 10 days left in regular season? It
Yes.
was kind of a late collapse. It was just it was a death march to get to that point because we saw how they were slowly but surely collapsing and everybody was worn out and Royce Lewis had nothing left in his tank and all that stuff was going on, but they were still in the postseason. That's till late. That's why it was such a punch in the gut. And yeah, everything that they every approach, well, coming into spring training this year, their goal was to get off to a better start and not have that
Yeah.
same finish happen. And they actually never got to that point. They got off to a terrible start again. They did have that beautiful winning streak,
Yeah.
but then things went haywire again. So, yeah, ever since you look at their record from like August of last year to this year, August of this year is probably well below 500.
Oh, well
So,
below, way below
um,
500. Yeah.
yeah, so they never found a way to shake off the end of 2024.
No.
But I also think the last 2 years were just hard on Rocco, just because after 2023 there was an effort to reduce payroll,
Hmm.
and then the trade, Black Thursday, the trade
Yeah.
fiasco, uh, before the trade deadline in this July. So things were definitely harder on him down the stretch.
No, no doubt about it. And now it's going to be somebody else's job. We just don't know who yet. But that kind of brings me to one of our two debate questions today. We've got a lot of names out there. You've reported on a bunch of them. Kind of keeping tabs on this. We heard some new ones this week. Catch me up to speed on all the known candidates, and then the question then becomes, Lavelle, who in this group for you or for a Twins fan should move the needle and be like, okay, I wasn't excited about this offseason. I wasn't excited about the direction things are going, but this hire could make me feel differently.
Let's see. Well, how many do we know of? Well, we know about Ramon Vasquez, the bench coach
With
with the
Boston,
Red
right?
Sox. And
Yep.
I actually got a text message from someone who was with him in A ball and totally endorsed the move, saying he'd be a great hire, great human being, would be fantastic with the media. Sounds like he's got a great sense of humor and really sharp about the game. Uh, Nick Punto was the one that surprised me. I didn't know
Yeah.
Nicky was interested in becoming a manager. I'm guessing because it was the Twins, is the team that he kind of became well known for being a piranha. Probably was their attraction with him. And then you got Derek Shelton, who used to be here as a bench coach, who was highly thought of here and well liked. James Rowson, who's definitely well liked here. He was the hitting coach for the 2019 Bomba squad, and he's got a wealth of hitting experience dealing with. He's a bench coach with Don Manley, who's one of the
Uh-huh.
smartest people I've encountered in baseball. He's worked with everyone from A Rod to Aaron Judge, hitting wise. Now, I don't know how that would translate as a manager because he's not going to be able to spend time in the batting cages if he's running the whole program. So I
Right.
don't know how that would look. Um, and then you've got Scott Service, who managed a few years with the Seattle Mariners and got fired in
midway through
August.
last season, 24, right? Yeah.
After they were like 10 games over 500 and
Yeah.
just collapsed.
They collapsed
And,
worse than the Twins did that year. Yeah, and
yeah.
sooner than they did. Yes.
Uh, and then Vance Wilson, who's a
Yep.
the third base coach for the Kansas City Royals. So, a couple of former catchers in that mix with
Yeah.
Service and Wilson. So out of that group, I feel most comfortable with Shelton because he's done it before and he's got some institutional knowledge of the Twins. Although I don't think too many players are still here from when he was here before. There may be definitely Buxton, maybe Jeffers as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that Scott Service has experience, but I also think that James Rowson has done enough in this game to deserve a shot. Just the different stops along the way. He's been with the Yankees twice, the Twins, Cubs, Marlins. Has worked with some really good hitters. Got a lot of experience, and he's let it be known he wanted to be a manager one day. So I would like to see James Rowson get a shot here.
I like that one too. That's maybe the top of my list. I'm intrigued by Punto. I don't really didn't really know him as much. Obviously, you covered him for a lot of years, and I've heard, from some people I know that that have endorsed him as well. I don't know where he like is on the kind of the hierarchy of what they might be thinking, but what was your impression of him? And did you like when you were covering him, where you're like, okay, this guy is destined to be a future manager, or what was his personality wise, otherwise, like thinking the game, stuff like that?
I think it improved as he gained some experience. When Punto was traded to the Twins, he came over in that Eric Milton trade along with Carlos Silva and Bobby Korecki. Um, and Nicky had a reputation for always being banged up and having niggling injuries, and it was driving the Twins up the wall because he couldn't stay on the field. And Mike Redmond, the backup catcher at the time and future manager, was instrumental in helping Nicky kind of fight through that stage of his career, become a guy who could be counted on, reliable, play through injuries. And I think through that, being on the field more, he gained valuable experience. He worked for Gardy. He played for Gardy, some of the coaching staff. So I think he probably knows the game pretty well. The fact that the Padres were willing to hire him, and Nicky wasn't doing too much. I think he was coaching like high school or something, and then
Hmm.
all of a sudden he's in the majors. So the Padres saw something that said, "Hey, we think this guy could work out here." So that tells me that he may have the managerial chops to handle the role. Yeah, I was also told that there are people definitely in Puto's corner with the Twins. Maybe some of his contemporary players have spoken up for him for this job, but just because he's all of a sudden kind of entered into our orbit here in the last couple of years
Yeah.
as a coach and possible manager, it's just a little. It's kind of hard for me to see him being ready for such a role.
It's a big leap from where he's at. Yeah, that's a fair point.
I didn't see Chris Suzuki being a manager, and look, he just got hired, by the Angels. And these doggone catchers, man, these catchers
They
think they know
love their
everything about
catcher.
baseball. They all want to be managers.
They do, and it makes sense, and there's been some success with it. Obviously, you get a lot of catchers historically who've gone on to be good managers. Thinking of guys like Joe Torre, Joe Girardi, guys like that. Guys who've had success as managers. There's plenty of other examples. What's our timetable here? It feels like it's got to be getting close if they've got this many people identified. We're talking about second interviews for some of them, and then if you just look like you wrote at when they hired Rocco, the date for that is coming up in just a few days here. So
Yeah.
you're gonna kind of add up the pieces, and we could be getting pretty close here.
I think so too. That's the indication I got earlier this week when I talked to one Twins official. They may be shooting for one of those off days during the World Series week um, to make an announcement. What's going to be tricky with this is that there's still like 6 job openings out there, and
Yeah.
all these teams are going to be wanting to request so they can announce their new managers as well. Will the league allow like 5 or 6 to be announced in one day,
Well,
or
get them
will
out of the
they
way.
ask
Yeah.
these teams to spread it out a little bit? Or do the teams tell them, look, we don't want to lose this guy? Can we just go ahead and
Yeah.
name him now and just move forward? We'll see. But yeah, I wrote my 3-2 pitch. I predicted October 26th, which is fast approaching here.
Yeah.
I believe that's the off day between games 1 and 2. I mean,
Okay.
games 2 and 3. So
Okay.
we'll see. But it's going to be sooner or later, folks. A week from now, we could be taping this podcast, and with the question being, did the Twins make the right decision?
Wouldn't surprise me. I do remember taping a podcast a few months ago and then having about 18 trades happen while we were trying to talk about the trade deadline. They were very rude to make more moves after we thought they were done. But we'll see. We love news. Hey, last thing for you. Vikings are going to start Carson Wentz for a fifth straight game. So including the bye week, this is 6 weeks now that a ankle injury would have kept JJ McCarthy out. Now there was the allowance of, hey, maybe if this was a normal week, they could have maybe gotten McCarthy ready to play Sunday if it wasn't if this Thursday night, which makes me think that we are nearing the end of the Carson Wentz run of games as a starting quarterback. He's not done anything to distinguish himself as someone who should continue to be the starter. He's done an okay job. He's kept the season afloat. He's done what a backup should do. Lavelle, my question is this. We're going into revisionist history territory.
Yeah,
Knowing
yeah.
what you know right now about how the season has played out, how McCarthy's been hurt, how when he was in there, he didn't quite look ready for prime time, would you have done anything differently with the quarterback spot if the Vikings? Would you have gone after Aaron Rodgers? Would you have pushed harder to keep Sam Darnold? Would you have said, Daniel Jones, it's your job for a year until McCarthy's ready to unseat you? Or was the plan good and we're just kind of living with the consequences of an injury right now?
You look back on it, and you got to believe that they should have either brought back Sam Donald or Daniel Jones. And I'm pro JJ McCarthy. I just want to be clear with that. I liked him at college. Of course, I'm showing preference to a Chicago guy as
Yeah.
well. He played hockey in high school. That should make him endear him to the Vikings fans here.
Tough guy town.
But coming off a 13-win season, with
14. Yes.
more of a veteranish team.
Yeah.
Not a lot of young talent because Quasi's drafts have really not been that impressive.
Yeah.
It's kind of more in the win now mode that you're not building for the future. Your future needs to be now. And that suggests that you should have kept one of the veteran quarterbacks to lead this thing because the trajectory of this franchise has been knocked off course now with this sprained ankle and the shaky start to JJ's career. Can he get it together? I certainly hope he can, but the fact is that they got quarterback issues, and I think the expectations for this year were to be at least a 12-win team, and I don't know if they're going to get there, to be honest with you. So, and yeah, it kind of stinks to have your top 10 pick sit on the bench for a second year, you know, but looking at what they had at the time, they had a better setup here with Danny Dimes and Darnold on campus here. I would have brought one of them back.
Yeah, the hindsight is a hard thing, but Jones is playing really well. Like he's been at or near the top of the ESPN total QBR rankings for much of the year. Same with Darnold. Darnold's way up there in the Pro Football Focus passer grades. Like, obviously both of them have benefited greatly from being graced by the quarterback whisperer. And I say that jokingly, but I also say it honestly. Like those guys have resurrected their careers. It's a credit to both of them, but also at least a partial credit, especially for Darnold, to what KOC was able to do with him. It's a hard system to learn, right? Like it's probably, even when they drafted McCarthy, there was already going to be this steep learning curve because his system is pretty complex. It requires a lot of kind of, even Kirk Cousins, when he was in the first year in this system, he was like, man, like I'm learning a lot right now. So what Darnold did was impressive, being only in the system for a year. But my point is, like, it was going to be a steep learning curve anyway for McCarthy. Then he's out all of last season, doesn't get those real reps. He gets the virtual reality reps, whatever you want to call it, and he's got a lot of build up here. But like, it doesn't simulate the real thing. And now he's the emergency quarterback Thursday. So like, from an active roster, like real chance to play in a game, he will have been healthy for 2 of 24 regular season games that he was eligible for, the very first 2 this season. That's problematic, and so is what we saw for some of his first 2 games. When he comes back, and I think it will be against Detroit, man, it's important to a lot of people that we see something else from him. Otherwise, this conversation we're having about should they have done something differently will be even louder.
With the Vikings being the Vikings, it's totally possible that Wentz gets knocked out on Thursday and Max Brosmer enters the game and adds another layer to all this mess. Because the Brosmer fans are going to be activated and get fired about anything he does if he ends up playing on Thursday. And I got a feeling that's where we're headed because nothing's easy for this franchise.
Well, I get it on social media all the time. I do like polls, or I'm like, here's Wentz, here's the argument for Wentz, here's McCarthy, and I get people in my mentions like, well, about Brosmer. I'm like, guys, like, he's a nice story. He's an undrafted free agent. Like, I really liked him in college, and like, I said something absurd on social media when he was in college. Like, I was like, guys, I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna put it out there. It's not like I'm not making this comparison, but I'm like, when he's in a rhythm and throwing those short passes, something about him reminds me of Aaron Rodgers. And people were like, oh, you can't say that. You can't say that about him. And I was like, he's not as good as Aaron. I'm not saying he's Aaron Rodgers. I'm just saying,
Who what your
like,
response is going to be.
when he's in kind of that zone, he's distributing the ball and he's in rhythm, like, he's got something to him, but he's not like, this is not the plan right now. I'm not saying it could never be the plan. I'm not saying he couldn't be the next Brock Purdy. Purdy was one pick away from being an undrafted free agent. I'm not saying that can't happen, but this is not the plan right now. The plan is try to get Carson Wentz through one more game, see if he can get a win, and then finally see what JJ McCarthy can do.
I agree with you. I hope that's what turns out. But we'll see.
Always.
It's always the most difficult path is the one that the Vikings usually end up traveling on.
Yes, it is. And I think JJ McCarthy would benefit greatly from getting back on the field. And I think Vikings fans would benefit greatly from not paying attention to how good Darnold and Daniel Jones and Rodgers to a degree. He's been okay. And Drake May has been awfully good this year too. The love we lost, they were never going to get him, but man, they really wanted him. That's another one. We got FOMO. We got a lot of FOMO right now, Lavelle.
Yes, we do.
All right. Well, thanks. Maybe next week we'll be talking about a Twins managerial hire. We'll definitely be talking Vikings. Until then, have a great one.
You too.
Great stuff from Lavelle. As always, hope you guys enjoyed his insights and interview with Rocco Baldelli, his thoughts on the Twins managerial search and the Vikings. We are going to stick with the Vikings here in the cooler. Got some things to demonstrate as to how important Thursday night's game is against the Chargers. Carson Wentz for a fifth game in a row. Still unsure of exactly what the status is going to be for Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw, which is a big deal. Feels like this short week just comes at a terrible time. It never comes at a great time, but this year in particular, like, if it was a full week, maybe you get McCarthy back. If it's a full week, you feel a lot better about the health of your tackles coming off of a full game against the Eagles, a tough game against the Eagles that they lost. Instead, now you got to try to put everybody out there on a short week. It's tough. It's tough on the Chargers too, but the Vikings have to travel. Like, this is a difficult game to begin with, but it's also a very important game. Here is why. New York Times has a playoff simulator up again now. I played out the rest of the season. Let's show it to you now. Let's talk about it now. So here is kind of my look at how things could go for the Vikings if they beat the Chargers tonight. So you got the rest of the schedule here. You're looking at it, okay, maybe you lose next week to the Lions. That's a tough game at the Lions. But maybe you win the next two against the Ravens and the Bears after that. Go to Green Bay and lose. I'm putting the Seahawks game in the win column. That's not an easy game by any stretch. The Seahawks are pretty good this season, but I think they could win that game. Give them a win over the Commanders, a win over the Cowboys. Lost to the Cowboys at Dallas. That's a tough game. Win over the Giants, lost to the Lions at home, and then a win over the Packers at home to finish things off. And so there you have 59% chance to make the postseason if you go 7-4 with that combination. It feels reasonable. I'm not saying they're going to do this, but this is just one simulation of how the rest of the season could go if you go 7-4, and that includes a win tonight. Let's just change one thing. We're changing one thing, changing tonight's outcome to a loss. You go from a 59% chance of making the playoffs to an 8% chance of making the playoffs. If you just change one thing, if you go 6-5 in these next 11 instead of 7-4. If you flip that one result, you go from a 59% chance of making the playoffs to an 8% chance. And again, you could probably do that with a lot of the games, so it's not just this game, but at 3-3 right now, it sure feels like this is a very important swing game that you might look back on at the end of the season and say, wow, that was the one that determined their fate one way or another. That'll do it for me today. Vikings post game, I'll definitely post that to YouTube. I might use that on Friday's regular daily delivery audio broadcast as well. We'll have to see. Just kind of sorting out everything else tonight and tomorrow. But for sure, there'll be lots of Vikings talk coming up soon off of tonight's game. A huge one, like I just talked about. And we'll go from there. Until then, I'm Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll talk to you again later.